Hello, I'm Tom, your host for Homeschool Gone WILD. Live in today for Karla Williams. I'm her husband and the dad of the Sensational Six. So we're going to take a walk around right now and show you a little bit of the festivities of the day. And some of our guests here. Wave everybody, say hello. Yeah, there we go. And here's a picture of our cake. You see it's the exact same picture of the cover. It's beautiful. So we're so excited about today. It's been a labor of love for Karla and I as a husband. But during this Facebook Live, you get a chance to actually interact and get some tidbits and answer some questions from Karla. So why don't we get started with that? Karla, you ready?
I am ready.
Okay. So first of all, who was this book for?
This book is for any parent. Whether your child is homeschooled, unschooled, world schooled, or they go to public school or private school, the home is, and the parent is the child's first teacher. And so it doesn't matter where your child goes to school, whether it's home or not, being the parent, the child's first teacher, this book is for you. So any parent that wants to expose their kids to greatness, that wants to inspire them to do what God has called them to do, this book is for you. So that would be for any parent.
Very good, very good. So what was your purpose behind writing this book?
Wow.
Purpose.
My purpose behind writing this book. I kind of had three, to be honest. And one of them is for parents. A lot of times I see the frustration that parents have in trying to help their kids find their thing. And the older their kid gets, they're concerned that their kid will not fulfill their greatest potential. And so I wrote this book because people need to know that your children don't begin to dream when they graduate from high school. But you can help them dream and dibble and dabble in the things that they're passionate about and interested in very young. So by the time they graduate from high school, they kind of have an idea of what their thing is and what it is that they want to do with their life. They may not have it all mapped out, and that's okay, because a lot of adults don't have it all mapped out. So that's fine. But you kind of get to introduce them to things earlier in life than what our culture normally says you do. Number two, I come across a lot of homeschool parents that are bored out of their mind because they feel like they have to bring exactly what school is home, and it's school at home. And because they need to know that there are other ways of doing things, there are other ways of teaching, other ways that children can learn, and that's another reason why I wrote the book. And then there's homeschool burnout. You have a lot of parents that are homeschoolers and they have had enough. It's too hard, it's too much involved, and they need to know that there are other ways of doing things, and that's exactly what Homeschool Wild is there to teach. That you can teach your children in out-of-the-box ways, in lots of different formats, lots of different resources that are available to you that were not necessarily available to homeschoolers 20, 30 years ago. That now there is so much available to you in so many ways that your children can learn through life and through their interests that the book will be able to reveal to you.
Very good, okay. Now we've been homeschooling for quite some time,
Yes.
about 9 years or so. What was the hardest part of changing how you approach homeschooling?
The hardest part for me was, like what I mentioned before, I thought that school had to be done a certain way. I thought that exactly the way that it was done when my children were in traditional school, I had to do it when I brought them home. And we crashed and burned quick because we tried to duplicate school at home, and it just did not work for our family. My kids hated it, I hated it, and my husband hated hearing about it at the end of every day. And so it's one of those things where it's like, something's got to give, because when we started, I was so excited, and I set up this classroom with all the bells and whistles and a chalkboard and desks for my 3-year-old. Can you believe it? And it didn't work. It didn't work. We crashed and burned, and believe it or not, we suffered through it for 3 years before we recognized there's got to be a better way.
So, okay, what do your days look like now if you don't use a schedule or a curriculum for our beautiful 6 kids?
Well, that's an interesting question. Our days, every day can be different. Every day can be absolutely different, and that is because our family evolves, our children evolve, we evolve as parents, but their interests change. We don't necessarily operate on a schedule, but we do have a routine. We have a morning routine. We kind of do things in the same way in the morning. We have an evening routine where we do things the same way in the evening. But we also, the time in between can vary, and it's going to vary depending upon my children's interest. Because we are interest-led learners, we try to focus all of their learning based on what they're currently interested in. And the way that we do that is, if we have a child that's interested in aviation, then obviously reading, writing, math, all those kinds of things, we try to cater toward that particular interest. And so our children are in charge of their day, and they have the ability to decide what they do, when they do it, how they do it, and according to the goals that they make for themselves. And it has worked beautifully for us over the last 5 years, where our children have been able to tap into some of the gifts and talents that they had, that if I was following a checklist or a curriculum, I would have never known that they had. And so that's been what's so beautiful about it, is that we've been able to unveil some beautiful gifts and talents and really God-given purposes on the inside of our kids, because we were able to take our hands off and let them lead in their learning.
Okay, one more question before we open it up to the online audience, and maybe a couple questions here from those that are live here in the room. What do you love most about interest-led learning?
What do I love most? I'm not going to get emotional. But what I love most is seeing my kids blossom. Seeing a child that struggled in a particular area, and then seeing them find their thing, their niche, their interest, their passion, and see them blossom from doing that. There's nothing better than that. There's nothing better than a child who ended homeschool in tears, turning into a child that is motivated about who they are and who God created them to be. And that's what I want for all of my kids, and I'm sure that that's what everybody here and online wants for their kids too. And so that's why we approach learning differently, because we wanted different results.
Great. What I'd like to do right now is open the floor for a couple questions from those online. Is there anyone here online, live, that has a question for Karla? I'm looking. Miriam says congratulations. Miriam
Thank
Butler.
you.
Okay. Is anyone here in the room has a question? Don't be shy.
I have a question. How do you help your children set goals for themselves?
Well, when it comes to helping our children set goals, there are certain things that you need in life, right? You know, like reading is essential, because to follow your interests, you're going to need to read something, right? Writing is a life skill. Those kinds of things. So there's certain things that we make sure are on their goal list. And we don't necessarily do a traditional school year, but at the beginning of the year, we set goals with our children, saying, okay, these are the things that you definitely need to do, okay? We all want to go to the next level in reading, we all want to go to the next level in writing, but how you do that is up to you. So we give them blank notebooks and we say, fill them up. And you can imagine, one of my daughter's blank notebooks turned into her first published book. So it just kind of gives you an idea. There are things that they need to know, and we help put those on their goal list. But the rest of those goals are based on their interest and their passions. And so that's going to look completely different for every child. So the way that they choose to spend their day is based on overall those goals they've made for themselves at the beginning of the year. So they know, one of my sons is into aviation. He knows how many flight hours he wants to get in the air in a year. Okay, so he sets that goal for himself. They set those goals. My daughter, who is an author, she wants to write so many books in a year, or, you know, that kind of thing. So they're setting those goals outside of the basic ones that we help them set. Does that make sense? Okay.
Okay, you have a few questions that are coming in right now, so
Okay.
let's try and answer some of those. Ideas for strewing. I know you want to talk about that. You want to go ahead and kind of do that now?
Actually, I'm going to wait on that because I'm going to be explaining our strewing table in just a moment, if you can hold on.
Okay. Another question was, how do our kids as unschoolers think about unschoolers?
that's interesting. And I would ask them, but we didn't rehearse that. No, I'm kidding. But I will answer, and I will answer it objectively, because I think that any homeschool child is going to dream about what it would be like to do something that they're not doing, right? So homeschool, unschool kid is going to think about, I wonder what it would be like to go to school. So of course, every kid's going to want to think about that and maybe try it at some point, right? So the flip side of that is, my kids love their freedom. I don't think that you could talk to any of my kids, and we can even do that, but you wouldn't talk to any of my kids and they would say, I hate getting to decide what I want to do. They're not going to say that to you. They're not going to say, I hate doing what I love, right? No kid's going to do that. But the flip side of that is that I do have a child that needed a slightly bit more structure. And so he was not happy with unschooling. I'll just be honest with you. He was not happy at all, because the way he thinks needed something different. And so what we did is we made sure that he was able to choose the curriculum, or the resource, not really a curriculum, but the resources that he uses. He was able to choose what he used, how he used it, and when he used it. And they needed to be traditional resources. And so now he's a happy camper, because of course he has the type of resources that appeal to his intellect, but he also has the ability and the freedom to choose and organize his own day. So we've had periods of time where my kids have had a hard time deciding, I don't know what to do with myself. I need you to tell me what to do. And I will give you more information about strewing in a moment that will kind of help answer that question, when your kids don't know what to do.
So another question here, and I know you get this question all the time. How do you approach schooling, unschooling, homeschooling with math and, well, multiplication division was the question.
Multiplication and division. Okay, well that's also going to be answered over there, but I want to point out that there are so many different ways to learn through life. And below the ages of high school, we don't do a lot of formal math like workbooks or curriculum or anything like that. We're learning through life. We're learning fractions in the kitchen. We're learning multiplication outside by skip counting. We're doing multiplication tables on the driveway in chalk. But usually it's through skip counting and skip counting random things in life when it comes to multiplication. And then obviously division is the counterpart of multiplication, so those kind of go together. But we find ways in life to expose our kids to those same concepts that they may be, another child may be doing in a workbook. So we try to make sure that our kids recognize how math relates to their life. Because I think that, and I mentioned this in the book, one of the most, I think so many people have a fear of math because they don't know how it relates to life. They don't understand, what does this have to do with anything? How many times have you heard your child say, I'm never going to use this in life? When really as an adult, you know that you use it all the time. Even algebra and geometry, these are things that we use in our lives all the time. And so what we try to do is not just give our kids a page of problems to complete, but to expose them to the areas of life that those things apply. So it makes sense. So even if what they plan on doing with their life does not necessarily it's not math or science heavy, we still try to make sure that they have their basic information that they need to be able to function in life. So.
Okay, so let's have one final question here. There's a lot coming in. I'm sorry, I apologize that we can't get to all your questions, but I like this one right here. How do you handle well-meaning skeptics in your family?
Ooh, if my family's watching, I love you. Well, thankfully, we don't have any anymore. We don't have any anymore. In the very beginning, and actually I know that my dad and my stepmom are watching, but in the beginning, they had problems with, they were afraid. And most people, especially family, if they're showing any concern, is out, any fear or any doubt is out of concern. So you have to look at it in that way, that they want the best for your kids just like you do. And even though they don't understand your choice, and you're going to move forward with your choice anyway, it's important that you recognize that the fruit that you bear in the long run is going to speak louder than any words that you can say. And in the very beginning, they were kind of concerned. You know, what are you doing? And then when we went from homeschooling to interest-led learning, it was like, okay, you've lost your mind officially, right? And so, but they see our kids blossoming. So in the beginning, it was hard. So a lot of times you just have to let your fruit speak and not get into debates and arguments and things of that nature. And just let your fruit speak. Let the children speak for themselves. The education that they're obtaining through what you're doing will speak for itself. So don't always feel like you have to be in this debate or in this argument with family members. Love them, understand that their concerns are because they love your children and your family just like you do. Okay, so what we are going to do is we're going to head over to the drawing table because I want to talk to everybody about how we go about our days and what we do, like I said before, when our kids don't know what to do. So we're going to go over there. So I brought some items today that I think would be helpful for a lot of families that feel like they're in a rut, they're burnt out, they hate what they're doing, and they want something different. They just don't know what it is. That was me, and you'll read a lot about our story in the book, which you can get on Amazon. But I want to make sure that people know that there are other ways. You don't have to hate homeschooling. You don't have to hate what you're doing. It can be enjoyable. Is every day rosy? No. I also talk about that in the book. But you do have the ability to unleash an environment in your home that encourages creativity, ingenuity, freedom, and joy. Okay, so I want to talk about some of those things. We do not use a curriculum for any subject. As a matter of fact, we try to make topics connect so that the world appears fluid to our children. They can see how art appears in science, how math appears in art, how history and art and science and all of these things connect when you actually dig deep. And so we use what a lot of people call game schooling. And so I have a lot of games here as a result of some of the things that we do. For instance, we have a lot of math games that we use. You were talking about math facts. You were talking about math facts. One of our favorite ones is called Mathable. And this one basically is all about math facts. And it's one of my favorite. I don't think it's my kids' favorite because I always beat them. So I'm not one of those parents that lets their kids win as a mercy win. Right. I'm like, oh no, it's on. We're doing this. So, but I love this game. It helps them. There's been one time when I had my son sit down and say, solve every possible equation on the board until you can't solve anymore. And he did it. Took him a while, but he did it. And that's how we do it. Through games, through life, through cooking, through the grocery store, applying math to life. We have a math magic kit here. One of my sons, he's not here today, but he's 10. The other day, went around the house tricking people with magic tricks all day out of the math magic kit. Okay? So he's learning math outside of a workbook. And he's enjoying it, and it's learning that will stick. You know, when your kids are enjoying learning, it sticks. Things stick with you even as an adult if you're enjoying it. And so we have all kinds of things that we do as far as history, timeline games that are very fun where you can lay things in the timeline based on your knowledge of history and when things took place. We have all kinds of kits, science kits, that expose them to different types of science, the human body, anything that you can think of, dexterity. Even the books that we read, we try to be outside of the box. So we have a stack of our favorite Max Axiom books. Anybody that follows me knows I love Max Axiom, and he is a scientist that actually writes scientific books in comic book form. And The concepts are not watered down. They're not muted. It's heavy stuff in a fun way. So it's really cool. And then we try to keep kids. So a lot of times what happens, you wonder what my kids do with their time. They're in charge of what they do with their time as long as it's in line with the goals that they set for themselves and that we set together at the beginning of the year. And so we have a resource room where most of these things are out. I share this in the book, how I had the habit of collecting wonderful, beautiful resources and categorizing them alphabetically and per subject in a closet and closing the door. And wondered why my kids were bored, stiff, and didn't know what to do with their time. It's because out of sight, out of mind. Everything was put away. So I took everything out and I began to display it so that they saw what was available to them. Go ahead.
A question along the storyline. One viewer asked the question about how do you engage your child, motivate your child when they say, I'm bored, when what you're putting in front of them or laid out in front of them, they don't want to engage in?
That's a very good question. And we had some on boards this week, didn't we? And so what do? I remind them. I remind them of their goals. I remind them of the projects maybe that they have. One of my daughters wanted something to do, and I'm thinking, I'm sure there's sewing projects that you wanted to work on, or I'm sure that there's something that you've been wanting to work on, something that you wanted to learn about that you can learn about. Now, other things that I do is what is called strewing. And a lot of people don't know what this word means, but it is unforced, uncoerced placement of resources in the child's path without expectation or without requirement. And sometimes I have strewing disasters, like this past week where I put out the microscope and one child decided it was interesting. And everybody else was like, whatever. But that same thing, that same item I could have put out a month ago and 3 or 4 different children may have been interested in it. So it just depends. But I will put out a game and I'll invite them to play a game with me, or I will make a suggestion, or I'll pull up a website, or I'll get a book on a topic. So basically strewing is putting things in their environment. You could even strewing field trips, taking them somewhere, not necessarily that anybody's interest or passion is connected to, but just new information. So you strew things that are of interest to them already, and then things that you think may spark an interest in the future. So, okay. So I wanted to give everyone online the opportunity to win a free copy of the book. And so what we're going to do, the first person that comments online that they are homeschooling a little 2 to 7 years old, a middle 8 to 12, or 18, if you're homeschooling all 3 of those and you're the first person to make a comment, you will win a free copy of Homeschool Gone Wild. The second opportunity is I always believe in being a blessing to other people. So if you already have purchased Homeschool Gone Wild and you want to bless somebody else with that, then I want you to take a picture of yourself with the copy that you already have and then inbox it to Unschooling the Sensational 6 on Facebook, and then you will go into a drawing to win an extra copy to bless someone else with. And so I want to say to everybody online and to everybody here, thank you for coming. Thank you for being a part of our celebration. And I want you to know that you can get the book online on Amazon. It is available now. And as I said, I believe in being a blessing. So if the book has been a blessing to you and you've been able to do more in your homeschool and be inspired, then pass it on. Okay.
It looks like Monique Garner Weeks was the first one to say that she homeschools all 3 of those age groups.
Woo! So Monique Garner Weeks, you win a free copy of Homeschool Gone Wild. What you need to do is inbox us your address and we will get that out to you as soon as possible. So thank you everybody for tuning in online. Thank you everybody for coming, and get your copy.
If you guys don't mind, we'd like to walk around a little bit and if you wouldn't mind, just ask a couple questions, participate. Is that fine?
Yeah.
For those that want to, if you don't, that's okay.